Hi guys, so my sister a while ago told me about fictions, as in Phil and Dan fan fictions, and it's come to my attention that some of the fan fictions are a little bit weird. She told me about this one in particular called the Hat Fic. So that's what I'm going to read today. I've never read it before, been told about it, and apparently it's pretty gross. So yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, if I'm honest. Okay. Hey Dan, can we get a hamster? I always wanted one, but my roommate never thought that we could take care of it. Phil, we've talked about this. You wouldn't look after it properly. You can hardly look after yourself, he retorted. It wasn't really in an angry way, but he never even took into account that I was older than him, and I lived by myself before him, so getting a hamster wouldn't be that bad. I decided not to argue. Dan was stubborn and wouldn't change his mind. I was going into town later anyway, so I needed to get changed. I put on my usual skinny jeans and a top on. I finished getting the few pieces of food that Dan and I needed and was heading back to the bus when I walked past the pet shop. I couldn't resist, but walking in, I saw a cage with a small fluffy black and white hamster in the corner. I looked at the price, £10. It was too small and too cute to say no to. So I bought it and a cage and walked out just as my bus arrived. I paid my fare and hopped on. I couldn't stop smiling. My hamster was one of the best things I've ever done. Or that's what I thought. The point is that my sister's told me a lot of what happens in this story, and I know what's going to happen, and I'm just cringing already. I got home and shouted to Dan, "Dan, come see what I bought." He bounced into the hallway out of the front door. "What's up?" I raised the cage with the furry ball curled up in the corner again. The expressions on his face changed from a sweet and innocent smile to a sick and twisted one, with an evil glint in his eye. "I love it. I was completely wrong about saying no to getting one." He sounded genuine, but there was something about the way he said it that made me feel uneasy. "So what's it called?" Dan asked. "Can we call him Striker, please? I've always loved that name. I don't really know why." "Sure." His reply was cold and harsh. What was wrong with him? I shrugged it off and went into my room. It was only 9, but I was tired and felt a bit ill. I pulled my pyjama bottoms on and slipped into bed. I woke up during the night, my body freezing cold and I was unable to move. I opened my eyes and they went wide with shock. I looked down and I was naked with ropes tying me to a chair, and in the corner was a sinister-looking Dan that was also naked. Thanks for clarifying. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty. I was wondering how cold the room had to be for you to wake up." His voice sounded so fluffy and innocent, but the words coming out weren't. He was only wearing his fluffy brown hat. He pulled it off to reveal a small black creature sitting in it, Striker. What the fuck was he doing? I don't normally swear, but the situation was so confusing, and I was terrified. What was Dan going to do to me? I'm a little bit worried right now. Dan? What are you doing? Why am I tied up? Why? I stopped when he moved towards me. His expression changed from being happy, like when I woke up, to murderous. "Don't be scared, Phil. We can have some fun with Striker." He cackled menacingly and showed off his erect member, making mine start to rise. Why would you be aroused by this situation? Like, okay. Moving on. I'm not looking forward to this. He put the hat down. Stryker was still sitting in there and faced it with his length, the perfect height to aim into it. What? Dan, what are you doing? Please stop. He stormed over to me and gave me a rough kiss. Everything will be okay, I promise. Dan grabbed the gag from behind me and put it over my mouth. He walked back over to the hat and began to stroke, looking over to me as he did so. After a short time, his seed exploded into the hat, but he didn't stop there. He kept going until the hat was filled up to the top. Pretty sure that's not possible. The white liquid was nearly spilling over the top, and my poor hamster was barely able to breathe. And it was doing the doggy paddle just to survive. And all I could do is sit and watch. Dan grabbed the hamster's head and pushed it down into his own sperm. After... Oh God, what am I reading? Right. After 5 minutes of his sick games, he pulled it back up, dead. He snapped the hamster's head off, the neck bone shattering and making me mumble that was supposed to be a scream. The tears flowed down my face and he squeezed the blood of Stryker into the hat. He looked over at me. He was sick and twisted, but also kind of sexy. What? He's just killed your hamster and also ejaculated so much that an entire hat is full, and you're finding him a little bit sexy? Oh God. Where was I? Sexy. He picked up the hat and moved towards me. With one hand, he undid the gag. Open wide, he said in a sarcastic tone. I did as I was told. I didn't know what else was hiding behind me. He began to pour the sperm and hamster blood mixture into my mouth, only for me to realise that he had put my poor Stryker back in there, head and body. The fluid tasted disgusting, partly because it had gone cold. That's what you're worried about, that it's gone a little bit cold? You're drinking sperm and hamster blood. The fluid tasted disgusting, partly because it had gone cold, but also because I knew that it was my hamster's blood I was drinking. I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. He pulled back halfway through, not that I'm complaining, and he said, "Good little Phil, do I taste nice?" My eyes widened. What do I say? I was about to open my mouth when he slapped me. "Speak, bitch." I wanted to raise my hand to my face. My cold face stung when his hot, sticky hand touched it. "You taste amazing, Dan," I managed to choke out. Yeah, I do. Time for more fun. I didn't like where this was going. Neither do I, Phil, neither do I. He pulled the black body that was coated in white from the hat. Dan rammed it down my throat, causing my gag reflexes to kick in, and I vomited all down myself. Dan smirked and got at this and got on his knees and began to lick all over me. His soft tongue was gliding over me until it found its way to my throbbing erection. Wow. He stared at the tip and worked his way all the way down, deep-throating me. It felt so nice. Most people couldn't do this, but it didn't last long. He looked up to me, innocent brown eyes making me melt. "Promise you won't run." He sounded so sorry, so I nodded. He got up and untied me. He grabbed me by the shoulders. I'm going to lie on the floor and you're going to pour the rest of the hat on me, then lick it off, okay? He growled. Sweet loving Dan was gone then. I quickly nodded and he got onto the floor. I grabbed the hat and poured it onto him. No, when he got on the floor, you'd run. Like, he's just made you eat your hamster and... Oh my god. I didn't realise this was basically pornographic as well. I think she just said about the hamster in the hat, but she didn't tell me about anything else, so... yeah. Where was I? Grabbed the hat and poured it on him, just as he had commanded. I began to lick it off him. The mixture wasn't as bad as last time. I think it's because I'm not having it forced down my throat. Suck me off, Phil. It sounded so weird, but yet again, I did as I was told. I wasn't as good as him, but I could only fit half of him into my mouth before I felt sick. I was going for what seemed like forever before he pushed my head away. You've done well, but there's just one last thing I need you to do. He pulled the hamster's head from the pile of leftover sick. When you say stop, I will, but only if I think you've done good enough. He started to shake and I started to shake and tremble. Dan put his arm around me. It's okay, it won't be that bad. He hushed me. He was so much nicer again. Are you ready? He asked me, a sense of impatience groaning in his tone. Yes, Dan, I stuttered out, and he quickly rolled me onto my front, his hand placed on the top of my back, pinning me down, the hamster's head in the other hand, nearing my rectum. I know where this is going. So do I, Phil. What am I reading? He rammed it in with no hesitation, and a burning sensation spread throughout me. For the rest of it, he used his manhood to push it in. I wanted to shout, say stop, but he wouldn't. I knew it. Finally, it got too much, and I screamed out stop. I looked back at Dan, who just grinned. Come on, Phil, I know you can do better than that. He forcefully went in further, not quite all the way though. I'm sorry, I just read the last line, okay? Dan, please, I'm begging you to stop, it's so sore. I pleaded, the burning sensation turning into a stabbing feeling. Dan stroked my hair and gently pulled out of me. The hamster's head was still inside me. It felt horrible knowing that I had a dead animal's head sitting inside my intestines. Dan put his hand inside me and went deep. I cried out in pain. I felt like exploding. He finally showed me his hand with the head in it. I wished the torture was over, but I knew Dan would have other plans. But this time he didn't. He just wrapped his arm around my hips. Let's go to bed, Dan said, pulling me up. As he said so, I leaned in for a kiss, and so did he. Are you serious? Like... Okay. Let's just pretend it makes sense. We walked down into my room, and when we got in, he pushed me onto the bed. I thought he was going to want sex, but he was so caring and just spooned me until we fell asleep. I woke up to find Dan with a hamster's body and head in his mouth, chewing violently, bones snapping, crunching under his teeth. He had blood dripping from his chin. He crawled over to me, and I licked it off for him. He grinned as though I read his thoughts, and he finished eating. And every month we buy a hamster. I am so concerned for whoever wrote this is I've forgotten what I was about to say. Yeah, and I'm concerned for the person whoever wrote this. I feel as though they need deep psychological help. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you have like any other fan fictions or whatever you want me to read, I will. Yeah. Bye.